Welcome everyone to the Wake Up Call channel. I have to share with you this propaganda being pushed from CNN because this is what we can expect in the future. All you have to do is pretty much say that data, studies, science, attach those words to any common sense and change what was once common sense into data and studies and scientists, and everybody will believe whatever they read. And again, this is how this communist propaganda machine works. This is an article from CNN titled, "A detailed look at children's brains might show how sex and gender are different." So, of course, conveniently now, as they're formulating a communist foot soldier world that we're going to live in, where the youth out there are completely brainwashed into thinking that they're no longer men, they're no longer women, it's going to just get worse and worse and worse. And this is done by design. This, again, is right out of pretty much the Communist Manifesto. Men and women no longer exist. There's one everything in the New World Order. One gender, one race, one religion, one everything. Listen to this propaganda that they're gearing, again, towards young, confused teenagers. Why are these children confused? Well, they're confused because, for the most part, they're raised in a corrupt institution, the schooling system, and they're also raised by their technology. And every single celebrity and every single big corporation is shoving this down their throats. This is what I would call crimes against humanity. But these kids don't know any better because they're trusting in words like data, science, studies. They don't know who's behind it. We could tell them that it's the Baphomet himself, but they wouldn't believe us. They think that they're trusted people. And of course, they've been trained to look at people like me and you as hateful, as bigots, as conspiracy theorists, when all we're really trying to do, or I could speak for myself, all I'm trying to do is get people to wake up to basic mind control 101 because they're under it. And that includes conservatives who vote Republican just as much as it includes Democrats who vote democratically. The amount of mind control and brainwashing that's being done, we've never seen, at least in our lifetime, ever before. I can't imagine another time in human history where they've been able to get a stranglehold on people's minds like they have now. But listen to this article that is geared towards confusing young children even more. And then, of course, how they continually will push this repetition, mind control. This will seep into people's minds. This will become the new science. And then what we all knew as common sense, men have penises, girls have vaginas, will no longer exist. The more they push it, the more they spread it, the more they tie data to it, people will believe it. This is the article from CNN. Sex and gender are often conflated or equated in everyday conversations. And most Americans, or I should say American adults, believe a person's gender is determined by sex assigned at birth. But a new study of nearly 5,000 9 and 10-year-olds found that sex and gender map onto largely distinct parts of the brain. Maybe this is caused, let me chime in, maybe this is caused from trauma-based mind control, because we know most of the people in Hollywood push this onto their children, and of course, the children in Hollywood all go through trauma-based mind control from their parents. Then their parents are parts of what? Covens and secret societies that inflict this trauma onto their own children. So the new study of 9 and 10-year-olds found that sex and gender map onto the largely distinct parts of the brain. The research gives a first insight into how sex and gender may have measurable and unique influences on the brain, according to studies, just as other experiences have been shown to shape the brain. Right, and by shape the brain, mold the brain, you know what does things to the brain and causes alters in the brain, things that we look at in today's world, which I've talked about and read actual data and actual real scientific proof about trauma-based mind control through satanic ritual abuse. Alters are formed, and we call it in today's society, they like to call it things like schizophrenia or multiple personality disorder. This is brought about, of course, from forms of trauma that's caused to young children through torture, through all sorts of deviant acts that Satanists do to children. So they're telling us that the shape of the brain and the molding of the brain is going to be through experiences. Quote, moving forward, we really need to consider both sexes and genders separately if we better want to understand the brain. This is according to Dr. Elvisha Dahamala, an assistant professor, might as well be George Glass, of psychiatry at the Feinstein Institutes for Medical Research in Glen Oaks, California, and the co-author of a study published Friday in the Journal of Science Advances. The researchers on the new study defined sex as what was assigned to the child at birth. In the US, doctors make this assignment based on genitalia. Most people are assigned either male or female according to the research. The rest are intersex, a person whose sexual or reproductive anatomy doesn't fit this male or female binary. The researchers define gender as an individual's attitude, feelings, and behaviors, as well as socially constructed roles. They noted specifically that gender is not binary, meaning not all people identify as either male or female. Both sex and gender are a core part of human experience. They're key to how people perceive others and how they understand themselves. Both can influence behavior as well as health, the study shows. The researchers looked at brain imaging data from 4,757 children in the US, 2,315 assigned female at birth, 2,442 assigned male at birth, who were ages 9 and 10 and were a subset of the Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development Study, the ABCD, which is the largest long-term study of brain development and child health in the US over a period of 10 years. The children in the study underwent comprehensive neuroimaging, behavioral, developmental, and psychiatric assessments. Beyond tests such as MRIs, the scientists did surveys of the children and their parents that were focused on gender, both at the beginning of the research and then a year later. The children were asked about how they expressed their gender and how they felt about it. The parents were asked about a child's sex-typed behavior during play and whether the child had any gender dysphoria, a term that mental health professors use to describe clinically significant distress felt because a person's sense of their gender does not match their sex at birth. Parents were a key part of the study, said study co-author Dr. Bassett, a professor at the University of Pennsylvania with appointments in the departments of bioengineering, electrical, and systems engineering, physics, neurology, and psychiatry. They just put all this stuff on there, by the way, as a wall, so people will say, this guy's really, really smart, right? Systems and engineering, electrical, sounds like trauma-based to me. He says, quote, when kids have a particular kind of gender behavior or gender expression that will influence how their parents and also other caregivers and friends and family interact with them. That's what he said. According to information about a parent's perception of a child's gender gives researchers a better sense of the child's social environment and how it may affect their brain development. In other words, for those of you that don't understand what I'm saying, they're saying that in the future, you see how this is going to get flipped? That children whose parents are not teaching them this stuff, children whose parents are saying that a man is born with a penis and a woman is born with a vagina, a girl a vagina, a boy a penis, same difference, that they're not raising or teaching their kids properly. And when you start talking about community and community communism, the stuff that they're pushing, parents who raise their children this way, they're going to say that you're brainwashing your children and you're teaching them the opposite of what science says. That's what they're saying. By saying that a parent's perception of a child's gender will then formulate in that child's mind, but the child will never be able to choose what it really is because the parents are not raising them based on the newest science. So their social environment will affect their brain development, and you'll be held accountable if you're a normal person who used common sense instead of using government propaganda that they call science. The authors used a kind of artificial intelligence called machine learning that built a model that could predict a child's sex and reported gender from their brain scan. When the researchers looked the children's brain scans, the results seemed to show that sex influenced different regions of the brain that are involved in visual processing, sensory processing, and motor control, and some regions involved in executive function, which lets an individual organize and integrate information across time. Gender seems to influence some of the more sensory-specific networks that are associated with sex, but it also seems to have a broader influence and can be detected on different brain networks involved in executive function, including things like attention, social cognition, and emotional processing. So, again, what you're going to hear in the future is they're going to start telling you these things about the brain that never existed before, right? Now, a lot of people aren't taught about the brain in school because, again, they don't want to teach you anything that might be of use, like how the brain works, and then you might be able to figure out how government mind control works and say, wow, They're really trying to tap into this part of my brain using frequencies, or that part of my brain by using propaganda. They don't want you to think like that. They just want you to think that you're your own person. You're your best you. You're making all these decisions independently. Mind control is not real, right? They don't want you to do that. But what they will do is use the brain as a way to teach you lies, like to tell you that this part of our brain suddenly is telling us this person is born this way. What's next? They're going to tell us that a sensory in our brain or a wrinkle in our brain is going to be able to identify us as gay or straight? Probably. And people will believe it. They'll say it's science. They'll say it's on the brain. Ladies and gentlemen, it's part of the brain. Scientists are telling us this now. People used to think that way because scientists weren't able to do these types of CAT scans on the brain that tell somebody that they're born in the opposite body that they're in. This is the chaos that is going to ensue from these absolute mad scientists is an understatement. Okay? Sinister psychopaths is a better statement to use. They say, quote, the structure of the human brain can be shaped by expertise and experiences. Research on London taxi drivers, who must take extensive tests to show that they can navigate the city streets without maps or GPS, seems to show that they have significantly larger posterior hippocampi, excuse me if I mispronounce it, the part of the brain related to memory and navigation than in people who aren't taxi drivers. They say, quote, similarly as individuals and as humans, we are experts about ourselves and our gender. So it makes sense that gender will also be managed within our brains, mapped within our brains. So now they're telling you that gender is something that's mapped in your brain. It's not something you're born with. And these people out there are getting duped into all this stuff at the same time that they're getting hit with mind control and propaganda every single time they turn on a television. Because every single movie and TV show is designed to have characters. It used to be just a character that was gay. And then you would say, well, why does the gay person talk like this or act like that? By design. And now we've seen how that is rubbed off, that you can know somebody's preference in the bedroom based on the accent, how they pitch their voice, or how they dress, right? That's done by design. Same with this. They've now put characters in where a boy dresses as a girl dresses as a boy, but also the things that they want you to think, oh, you like this? This is something a boy likes. Well, maybe you're really a girl. This is the propaganda that's out there, and people think that this is normal. They're deliberately writing this into Hollywood. They're deliberately writing this into every single Netflix show so that you think that this is normal, because this is the perception you're going to have of the world through the lens of the devil. That's pretty much what it is, through the devil's eyeballs, right? So the article goes on to say the new study cannot do, what it cannot do is predict what gender a person may identify with beyond one limited snapshot in time captured by the scans and surveys. Gender, the authors note, is not something that is necessarily static, and a person's understanding of their gender can change throughout their lifetime. The study also can't determine what things in someone's environment will influence their brain function in terms of sex or gender, nor can it identify what a person's sexual orientation might be. But sexual orientation is independent from gender and from sex, according to Dr. Bassett. The researchers say they hope to someday learn more about how sex and gender interact in a person's life and how they influence one another and the brain throughout a lifetime. How about this? People out there are so confused. Why are you confused? Well, how come people in other time periods weren't confused? Because in other time periods, people weren't having their brains messed with, right? In other time periods, this type of technology wasn't out. So people weren't having this issue. People are having this issue now because you're getting messed with. You're getting effed with every single day by the government, by the media, who work hand in hand. They're one and the same. And they're making you think that there's something wrong with you when there isn't. They're making you feel something that you shouldn't be feeling because you're not supposed to feel it. They're doing this. You are under trauma-based mind control from the technology, from the government, and now from what they call science. So the other thing to take from this article, which continues to go on, but I won't bore you with anymore, is them talking about how the structure of the brain works and how if you could be born in the opposite body, but your brain may not know it yet because your parents are telling you, since you're born with a penis, that you're a boy, and if you're born with a vagina, you're a girl. And this might be, holding you back from being your true self and who you really are. So in the future, they're going to tell you this type of stuff. They're going to tell you that a wrinkle in your brain might really tell you that you're the opposite gender. And the only reason you haven't realized that yet is because you were raised in a household where dad was a dad because dad had a penis and mom was a mom. And everybody is going to fall for this stuff in the future. In fact, I guarantee you 50 years from now, we'll all be dead. And if the trumpets haven't sounded by then, well, I'll be pretty shocked. But let's say hypothetically, the world exists in 50 years. What we knew as normal will no longer be normal. And people 50 years from now, if they hear how we were raised, they'll be like, those people were out of their minds. Those people were extremists. Because the government will have full control of their minds, and they'll bury the actual truth, and they'll lie to these people. They'll manipulate these people into butchering their own bodies and put them through forms of trauma-based mind control that they can't even comprehend because they won't even know that it's happening to them. They'll think that people like us were living in the Stone Ages, that people like them are progressive. But that's not what this is. This is creating a new form of human, and this all leads to transhumanism. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families, as always.